You see, the great paradox of life is that the more we try to control it, the more it slips through our fingers, like water you try to grasp in your hands. The tighter you hold on, the faster it escapes. And yet, we spend most of our lives in this strange dance of control, trying to make everything certain, predictable, and safe. But life, in its essence, was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be experienced. We've been taught to treat living as a problem to be solved rather than a song to be sung. We worry about tomorrow, we cling to yesterday, and in doing so, we miss the very miracle of now. You see, when you stop trying to make the river flow your way, you discover something astonishing. It was carrying you all along. The beauty of life lies precisely in its uncertainty, in its spontaneity, in the way it unfolds without your permission. You can't control it, and that's not a tragedy. That's liberation. Because when you surrender the need to control, you finally begin to live. You see, the more we cling to the idea that we can control life, the more we trap ourselves in the very suffering we're trying to escape. Control is an illusion that the mind creates to feel safe in a world that is inherently unpredictable. From the moment we wake up, we begin to negotiate with reality. We plan, we predict, we try to mold circumstances, we try to shape people's opinions, we try to make the future behave the way we want. But deep down, there is a quiet knowing that life has never obeyed our demands. It moves on its own rhythm, its own mysterious timing, and yet we fight it as if we could force the ocean to stay still. We build walls around ourselves to keep change out, not realizing that the act of building those walls becomes the very source of our anxiety. The more we resist uncertainty, the more we feed it, and it begins to consume our peace, our spontaneity, our sense of wonder. We are told from a young age that success comes from control of emotions, control of outcomes, control of time. And so we grow up believing that to lose control is to fail. But that is where the paradox lies. In trying to control everything, we lose the very essence of living. We stop seeing the beauty in imperfection, the poetry in chaos, the wisdom in not knowing what comes next. We become rigid, mechanical, anxious creatures, always calculating, always fearing the next unpredictable turn. Yet life was never designed to be predictable. The seed does not know it will become a tree. The river does not plan its path. The stars do not decide where to shine. And still everything happens with perfect harmony, without control, without struggle, without fear. The illusion of control is the root of human suffering because it puts us in constant opposition to what is. It makes us believe that we can dictate reality, that we can make life bend to our will. But life, like music, is not something you control, it's something you dance with. You can't hold a melody still. The moment you do, it dies. The beauty of music lies in its movement, in the way it unfolds, note by note, with space for silence in between. And life, too, plays out that way. The more we try to conduct it, the less we hear its rhythm. The more we try to manage every beat, the less we feel its pulse. The desire for control often comes from fear of loss, fear of pain, fear of uncertainty. The mind wants to protect itself from the unknown by creating structure, plans, and routines. But fear is a trickster. It convinces you that safety lies in control, when in truth, safety lies in surrender. Because when you surrender, you stop fighting the current. You allow life to take its natural course, and in that flow there is peace. But as long as you believe that peace will only come once everything is in your control, you will never find it. You'll be waiting for a day that never comes, chasing stability in a world that thrives on change. There is a quiet suffering that follows those who live in control. They may look composed on the outside, but inside they are exhausted, constantly adjusting, correcting, anticipating. They do not trust life, and so they never rest. Their mind is like a tightrope walker balancing on expectations, terrified of falling into the unknown. But falling is not failure. Falling is grace disguised as chaos. It's life's way of reminding you that the ground beneath you has always been there. It's not the fall that hurts, it's the resistance to it. The fall is freedom, but we've been conditioned to see it as collapse. When you let go of control, you discover that life doesn't fall apart. It falls into place. Things begin to unfold in ways you could never have planned. The opportunities, the people, the moments, they arrive when you stop forcing them. You see, control limits possibility. It narrows your vision to only what you can imagine. But when you release control, you open yourself to what you cannot imagine, the infinite intelligence of life itself. You start to see that everything you once feared about uncertainty was actually a doorway to transformation. The pain, the confusion, the unpredictability, all of it was life reshaping you into something deeper, something freer, something real. The illusion of control is seductive because it promises comfort. It tells you that if you just work hard enough, plan long enough, or think carefully enough, you can avoid disappointment. But disappointment is not something to avoid, it is something to understand. Every unmet expectation is life showing you that you were attached to a fantasy. Control feeds attachment, and attachment feeds suffering. When you let go of control, you also let go of the need for things to happen a certain way. You allow life to express itself through you, instead of trying to force it to follow your script. It's strange how we spend our lives trying to manage life as though we are separate from it. But you are not a manager of life, you are life itself, experiencing its own dance of creation. The moment you realize this, control becomes unnecessary. The wave does not control the ocean, it moves with it. And in the same way, you do not control existence, you move as part of it. There's no battle to win, no struggle to maintain, only a rhythm to join. Once you feel that rhythm, once you stop trying to impose your will upon the universe, you begin to feel a quiet harmony rise within you. Many people think letting go of control means becoming careless or passive, but that's not true. Letting go does not mean you stop acting. It means your actions no longer come from fear. You still make choices, you still dream, you still strive, but without the anxiety of needing everything to go your way. You do what you can, and then you trust life with the rest. This trust changes everything. It turns ordinary moments into miracles. It replaces tension with presence. It dissolves the false sense of separation between you and the world. We often talk about peace as though it's something to be earned after we've achieved enough, controlled enough, or succeeded enough. But peace has nothing to do with what you achieve. It has everything to do with what you release. Peace is not found in mastery over life. It is found in harmony with it. You do not find peace by controlling the storm. You find peace by realizing you are not separate from it. The storm is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It shows you where you are still clinging, where you are still afraid, where you still believe that control equals safety. There comes a point in life when you begin to see the futility of trying to make everything certain. The job, the relationship, the health, the future, all of it moves according to laws far beyond human logic. You begin to notice that life happens through you, not to you. Every breath, every beat of your heart, every thought that arises, it's all spontaneous. You don't control it, and yet it happens perfectly. So why should the rest of life be any different? The same intelligence that makes your heart beat is the same intelligence that shapes your path. Trusting it doesn't mean everything will be easy, but it means you'll no longer suffer over what you cannot change. And this is the liberation that comes when the illusion of control dissolves, the freedom to simply be. You start to see that uncertainty isn't chaos, it's creativity. That loss isn't punishment, it's redirection. That surrender isn't defeat, it's alignment. The pain that comes from trying to control life begins to fade, replaced by a quiet acceptance, a gentle awareness that everything is already unfolding exactly as it should. The moment you stop demanding certainty, life becomes alive again. Every sound, every movement, every breath becomes sacred because it's no longer something you're trying to manage. It's something you're allowing to unfold through you. Life has never been a problem to be solved. Yet from the very beginning, we are taught to treat it as one. A set of challenges to overcome, goals to achieve, puzzles to fix. We approach existence like an engineer trying to repair a broken machine, constantly adjusting, improving, optimizing. But life is not a malfunctioning system. It is a living, breathing mystery. It was never asking to be solved, only to be trusted. When you try to manage life as though it were an equation, you miss the poetry of being alive. You miss the fragrance of the moment, the music between the words, the quiet intelligence that unfolds without your control. Life, in its essence, flows. It moves effortlessly, like a river finding its way to the sea. It doesn't think about its direction. It doesn't resist the rocks in its path. It simply moves, and in that movement, it finds its perfection. The human mind, however, is not comfortable with flow. It craves certainty. It wants everything to have an explanation, a plan, a destination. So we fill our days with strategies, structures, and endless attempts to define what cannot be defined. We measure time, we divide nature, we label emotions, we categorize ourselves into boxes that make us feel safe. But the more we try to contain life, the more it slips away. Because life was never meant to fit into the limits of human logic. It is too vast, too wild, too spontaneous. You can't put the sky in a jar. You can't capture the wind in your hands. And yet, that is what we keep trying to do, to make sense of something that was never supposed to be sensible. When you start to see life as a flow to be trusted instead of a problem to be managed, something inside you softens. The tension that has always lived beneath your surface, the pressure to make everything work, the anxiety of doing it all right, the exhaustion of always being in control begins to dissolve. You realize that your life does not need constant management. The universe does not need your supervision. The sun rises without your help. The body breathes without your command. The heart beats without your decision. And so it becomes clear that existence itself operates effortlessly, guided by an intelligence beyond thought. You are not the engineer of this flow, you are part of it. You are the wave in the ocean, not the ocean's manager. To live in flow is to live in trust, a trust that life knows what it's doing even when you do not. It means allowing uncertainty to exist without panic. It means walking into the unknown without needing to predict its outcome. The more you trust, the lighter you become. You stop carrying the unnecessary burden of control. You stop forcing life to follow your timetable. Instead, you begin to notice how things unfold with a certain rhythm, a natural timing that is never late and never early. Everything arrives exactly when it is meant to. The people you meet, the moments you experience, the opportunities that appear, they all come in their own season. You don't have to chase them. You only have to be open enough to receive them when they come. But trust does not mean passivity. It does not mean sitting still and waiting for life to happen. Trust means participating fully without the obsession of control. It means acting without attachment to the result. It means giving your best but releasing the need to dictate how your effort should turn out. You do what is within your capacity and then let life take care of the rest. This is the way of balance, effort and ease, doing and allowing, motion and stillness. The river flows because it moves, but it moves because it trusts the direction of gravity. It doesn't fight it. It doesn't worry about the path ahead. It simply follows its nature. And that is what you are invited to do, to live according to your nature, not according to your fears. We live in a world that glorifies control, planning, and productivity. We are told that every minute must be managed, every step must be calculated, every goal must be pursued relentlessly. But this approach leaves us restless. We live in constant anxiety, trying to shape the future while escaping the present. The more we manage, the more life feels like a task. The more we plan, the less alive we become. Because in the act of managing, we are always elsewhere, never fully here. To trust the flow of life is to return to this moment. It is to rediscover the sacred simplicity of being alive without needing to justify it. There is a wisdom in the natural order of things that our minds can never comprehend. A seed does not question how it will grow. It simply rests in the soil, allowing the rain, the sun, and time to do their work. It does not resist darkness. It does not fear the unknown. It trusts. And that trust becomes its transformation. In the same way, when you stop managing every detail of your existence, you create space for growth, for spontaneity, for miracles. Life begins to surprise you again. You begin to see that every delay had purpose, every detour had meaning. Every loss was preparing you for something greater. The flow always knows where it is going, even when you do not. The more you resist the flow, the more you suffer. Resistance turns life into a battle, a constant struggle against what is. You start to feel tired, anxious, burdened by your own expectations. You begin to live like a soldier rather than a dancer. But life is not meant to be fought, it's meant to be danced. And the dance only becomes graceful when you stop trying to lead. The music of existence moves through you when you stop trying to choreograph it. You let it guide your steps, you allow it to surprise you, and in that surrender you discover joy, not the joy that depends on perfection, but the joy that comes from being in harmony with the unpredictable rhythm of life. When you begin to live in this way, even pain transforms. You start to see that suffering is not punishment. It is part of the flow. It moves you, shapes you, deepens you. Just as the river needs the rocks to create music, your life needs resistance to create meaning. The flow of life is not always smooth, but it is always purposeful. When you can trust even the turbulence, you rise above fear. You begin to experience a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. You no longer need everything to be perfect to feel peace. You begin to feel peace simply because you trust that whatever happens, you will be carried. This way of living does not require belief in any system or ideology. It requires presence. It requires awareness of the simple truth that you are not separate from the flow you are trying to control. You are the flow. You are the current. You are the life that is unfolding. There is no line between you and existence. It is all one movement. The wave does not need to control the sea because it is the sea in motion. When you realize this, the struggle ends. The need to fix, to manage, to control dissolves. All that remains is a deep sense of belonging, and knowing that wherever you are, whatever is happening, you are exactly where you need to be. Most people live as if they are constantly behind schedule, as though life is something they must catch up to. But life has no schedule. It is eternal. It unfolds outside of the ticking of clocks and the plans of men. When you try to force it into a linear path, you create tension. But when you allow yourself to move with it, you begin to notice the synchronicities, the subtle signs that life is communicating with you. The right people appear at the right time. The right lessons come when you are ready. The right doors open without you pushing. This is not coincidence. It is the flow in motion. Living in flow also means accepting that not everything will make sense immediately. Sometimes clarity comes long after confusion. Sometimes what feels like loss turns out to be protection. Sometimes what looks like an ending is simply a beginning disguised. The flow doesn't reveal its purpose all at once. It asks for your trust before it shows its wisdom. And that is where the beauty lies, in learning to move through uncertainty with an open heart, to walk through darkness with faith in the unseen current beneath your feet. You are not here to solve life. You are here to experience it, to feel the full range of its colors, to taste the sweetness and the bitterness, to witness the unfolding of something infinitely larger than yourself. When you stop treating life as a project, you start living as a presence. You stop managing and start listening. You begin to notice the small miracles. The way light dances on water, the way laughter fills a room, the way silence can hold you like an embrace. These are the gifts the flow gives when you stop fighting it. And so the invitation is simple. Trust the river. Trust that it knows its way. Trust that even when the current feels strong, even when the direction is unclear, you are being carried to where you are meant to go. Stop trying to swim against it. Stop exhausting yourself by managing every ripple. Allow the water to guide you, because life is not a problem to be managed, but a flow to be trusted. And in that trust, you will find the peace that has always been waiting beneath the noise of your need for control. Surrender is one of the most misunderstood words in human language. To many, it sounds like defeat, weakness, or giving up. But in truth, surrender is not the collapse of strength. It is the awakening of intelligence. It is the moment when you stop fighting with reality and begin to move with it. To surrender is to realize that life has always been larger than your plans, wiser than your logic, and kinder than your fears. It is the quiet recognition that no matter how much you struggle, no matter how hard you try to impose your will upon existence, life will always have the final word. But when that realization dawns, it doesn't come with bitterness. It comes with peace. Because you see that it was never about winning or losing control. It was about learning to trust the rhythm of the universe, to let life breathe through you instead of trying to trap it in your grasp. For most of us, surrender only comes after exhaustion. We fight, we plan, we resist until we finally realize that the harder we push, the farther peace drifts away. We cling to our desires, our beliefs, our fears, thinking that holding on will give us security. But the act of clinging only tightens the chains around our heart. True freedom doesn't come from having everything go your way. It comes from no longer needing it to. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying the unbearable weight of resistance. You allow life to unfold as it must, without demanding that it bend to your expectations. In that letting go, you discover an intelligence that has been guiding you all along, an intelligence that needs no control, no justification, no interference. The mind fears surrender because it thrives on control. It is addicted to the illusion that it can plan every detail, predict every outcome, and protect itself from the unknown. But the unknown is not the enemy. It is the birthplace of all that is beautiful. Every act of creation, every moment of love, every burst of inspiration comes from the unknown. To surrender is to open yourself to that creative source. It is to trust that what comes is not against you, but for you. The river does not know where it will twist or turn, but it flows because it trusts the pull of the current. It does not panic when it meets rocks or bends. It simply moves with grace around them. In the same way, when you surrender, you move through life's obstacles with quiet strength, knowing that each moment is part of a larger flow that you don't need to understand in order to experience. There is a deep wisdom that awakens when you stop resisting. When you stop fighting what is, the energy you once wasted on fear transforms into awareness. You begin to see things as they truly are, not as you wish them to be. You begin to feel the simplicity of existence, the way life breathes in patterns of order even through chaos. The need to control others fades, the urge to manipulate circumstances dissolves, and what remains is clarity. You realize that peace was never something to be achieved, it was something to be allowed. You do not manufacture peace, you uncover it by removing the noise of control. It's like a lake that appears muddy only because the water has been stirred. When you stop stirring it, the mud settles and the surface becomes clear. Surrender is not an act of laziness or resignation. It is not saying, I give up. It is saying, I give in to what is real. It is the decision to move in harmony with life rather than against it. You still act, you still dream, you still love, but your actions no longer come from fear. Your dreams no longer come from lack. Your love no longer comes with conditions. You begin to move from a place of presence, not pressure. This is where the intelligence of surrender reveals itself. It is not the intelligence of calculation, but of connection. It allows you to sense when to move forward, when to wait, when to speak, and when to remain silent. It aligns your timing with the rhythm of life. Everything begins to happen not by force, but by flow. The ego resists surrender because it thrives on separation. It believes that to surrender is to lose identity, to dissolve into insignificance. But that fear is based on misunderstanding. When you surrender, you do not lose yourself. You lose the false self that was built on fear, comparison, and control. What remains is your essence, pure, unburdened, alive. The drop of water that merges with the ocean does not disappear. It becomes part of something infinite. Likewise, when you surrender, you do not vanish, you expand. You realize that you were never separate from the flow of life to begin with. You were always a part of the same intelligence that turns seasons, moves galaxies, and gives birth to stars. To live in surrender is to live in constant acceptance of the present moment. You no longer argue with what has already arrived. You no longer waste your energy wishing that things were different. You see that reality in its raw form is already whole. Even in pain, there is perfection. Even in confusion, there is order. When you stop labeling every experience as good or bad, gain or loss, right or wrong, you begin to see the neutral stillness that underlies all motion. Surrender reveals that duality, the constant division of life into opposites, exists only in the mind. Life itself is one unbroken movement. The moment you stop dividing it, you begin to live in harmony with it. Surrender teaches humility, not the kind that diminishes you, but the kind that frees you from the illusion of control. It reminds you that you are not the center of the universe, but an expression of it. You begin to move with gentleness because you understand that everything you encounter is part of the same whole. You stop trying to dominate life and start participating in it. You stop treating experiences as possessions and start receiving them as gifts. Even pain becomes sacred because it awakens depth. Even loss becomes a teacher because it strips away illusion. You no longer cling to what leaves or fear what comes. You welcome everything as a guest, knowing that each has its purpose in shaping the mystery that is you. There is a beauty in the vulnerability of surrender. When you stop pretending to be in control, you allow yourself to be seen by life. You become open, available, receptive. And in that openness, miracles occur. You begin to notice synchronicities, moments that feel guided, coincidences that feel intentional. You realize that life has always been communicating with you, but control made you too noisy to hear it. When you surrender, you quiet down enough to listen. You start to feel a gentle guidance, not from outside, but from within. It is the quiet whisper of intuition, the subtle pull of alignment, the sense of rightness that doesn't come from reasoning, but from resonance. The greatest peace comes not from having life go your way, but from trusting that whatever way it goes, it is still your path. Surrender transforms suffering into meaning because it removes resistance. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is the result of fighting what is. When you surrender, you stop fighting. You allow life to move through you, and even the difficult moments begin to reveal their hidden grace. The breakup that breaks your heart becomes the space where love matures. The failure that humbles you becomes the soil where wisdom grows. The loss that empties you becomes the door through which you discover fullness. Surrender is the art of aligning with life's intelligence instead of resisting it. It's like learning to surf. You can't control the wave, but you can learn to move with it. You learn when to rise, when to fall, when to rest, when to flow. And through that dance, you begin to feel something sacred, the realization that life has never been against you. It was always carrying you even through the storms, even through the dark nights, even through the confusion. You were never abandoned. You were being guided toward understanding, toward expansion, toward awakening. When you truly surrender, fear loses its hold, because fear thrives on the need for control, and when control dissolves, fear has nowhere to hide. You begin to move through life with lightness, with playfulness. You stop taking every event so seriously. You stop believing that you must have every answer. You begin to laugh again, not the laughter of escape, but of recognition. You see how absurd it was to think you could control the infinite. You begin to love the mystery instead of fearing it. You begin to see the divine humor in the way life unfolds. Surrender is not something you do once. It is a way of living. Every day brings new opportunities to release your grip, to let go of a thought, an expectation, a worry, a memory. Each moment becomes a teacher asking, will you resist or will you allow? And the more you allow, the more graceful life becomes. The storms still come, but you no longer fight the rain. You dance in it. You let it cleanse you. You let it show you that even chaos has rhythm. Through surrender, love deepens, because love without surrender is possession. But love that flows in surrender becomes boundless. You love not because you need, but because you are. You love without agenda, without fear, without demand. You become love itself, open, fluid, alive. And that is the highest form of intelligence, because only love sees clearly. Control blinds, fear distorts, but surrender allows you to see the truth as it is, whole, beautiful, and free. When surrender becomes your natural state, even the simplest things become profound. The sound of wind becomes a song. The touch of sunlight becomes a blessing. The stillness of night becomes a meditation. You begin to live not as a thinker, but as a presence, not as a controller, but as a participant. You no longer chase life, you dance with it. You no longer fear endings, you welcome beginnings. You realize that surrender was never about giving up. It was about waking up to the fact that you were never separate from life. That life was never happening to you, but through you, as you, for you.